It doesn't matter who you are, even if you're not going to the gym. And that's why it's so important to know how to squat properly and why to do it properly. What's going on, guys? We are talking about an important topic tonight. It is the 4 squatting cues you need to be aware of in order to avoid injury, right? And it could mean a past injury, it could mean a future injury that can happen because you're not paying attention to your form. But this is super important. So if you have a pen and paper, get it out. You can write some things down. I'm going to share my screen with you as well, so you can take some notes on this. And this is just something that I see and I help people with all the time. It's improving their barbell back squat form, their barbell front squat form, even their body weight air squat form, right? Because squatting is so important because you're not just doing it in the gym, right? You're doing it throughout the day. And I don't care who you are, no matter who you are, you're squatting, right? And it could mean you're squatting to put things in the washer, put things in the dishwasher, right? Take things out of the dryer, etc. Maybe you drop your keys, maybe you kind of drop your headphones at the gym, right? You're squatting throughout the day. It doesn't matter who you are, even if you're not going to the gym. And that's why it's so important to know how to squat properly and why to do it properly, because it's going to help preserve your body from injury and kind of bulletproof you, so to speak. So let me share my screen with you guys. All right, so this video is not going to cover all the things we're going to talk about, but we're going to start with squatting cue number 1, right? And that's assuming a natural stance. So what do I mean when I say a natural stance? Natural stance just means pick a stance that's comfortable for you and your body, right? For me, I like to stand with my feet a little bit wider than shoulder width distance apart, and I like to turn my feet slightly outwards. Why do I do that? Because my hip joints, right? If you can see my cursor here on the kind of skeleton model, my hip joints tend to face more towards the back of the room. It's just my anatomy, it was the way I was born, the way I kind of came out of the womb, right? My hip joints are more retroverted, right? Some people's hips are more anteverted, they're more forward facing. Some are right in the middle, it just depends. If you're right in the middle, usually that shoulder width distance apart stance with your feet facing forward works really well. If they're more forward facing, typically a more narrow stance with your feet somewhat turning in feels a little bit more comfortable, right? If you're like me and they're more backwards facing, you like to take a wide stance, almost like a sumo squat or a deadlift, and you almost out toe a little bit. You turn your feet outwards, and that just takes some stress off of the knees and some stress off of the hips. Not everyone needs to do that, and that's the super most important part as we kind of go through this. So that's number 1. Find your stance, right? You can toy around with it. This video, again, it's not going to correlate with exactly what I'm saying, but it's going to show you some kind of good things about like muscles you use when you squat, which we can touch on. Right, so he's just showing you there that you're using your quad muscles, and this is your quad tendon at the top of your knee, and your patellar tendon here. So it's a good target muscle that you're working as you're squatting, right? If you're squatting with proper form and thinking about using that muscle. So they're just showing you like the improper kind of movements people tend to do, right? They tend to cave their trunk over, tend to move their knees too much excessively forward and back. It almost looks like a deadlift in this position, right? And if I was to cue the volume, right, they would just be saying you got to keep your trunk upright, right? So you don't hurt your lower back, and you got to use your glutes. And if your glutes are activated, it's going to keep you more upright, and it's going to stop you from leaning forward because your glutes are going to help your trunk stay in extension, which just means your trunk's stacked right over top of your hips. Okay. Hamstrings as well, right? They're going to be a synergist muscle. So they're going to help this main muscle of your quads work, right? To assist you in pulling up from the bottom of the squat, right? So moving from the bottom to the top, that hamstrings and the glutes are going to be the main things helping you with a little bit of your quads as well. Okay. So super important, really cool video just to kind of show you as I'm talking, so you don't have to stare at me for 10 or 15 minutes, right? Then again, they're just going through the trunk position, and that you do use other stabilizers in your back, which are called your erector spinae. It's just a big group of muscles, right, that run up longitudinally along both sides of the back. And you need those muscles firing with your abdominals in order to stay nice and upright with your trunk. So they're going to put your transverse abdominis, we call it the TA muscle as well, and that's going to keep you nice and upright. I don't know, hopefully this goes into the feet a little bit and the kind of calf muscles, because those are important too. In our next kind of number 2, here we go. So if they're pulling into the calf muscles here, right, the Achilles tendon, the gastrocnemius and soleus muscle, those are synergist muscles as well that help you come out of the bottom of the squat to the top. And we can stop here and pause for a second, because squatting cue number 2 after assume a natural stance is create a tripod foot. If you don't know what that means, I'm not going to explain it. I spent 10 minutes explaining it last week. Go back to the video from last week. You can scroll down in the group or message me, ask me, I want the tripod foot video. And I explained that your weight needs to be distributed between the base of your big toe, right, the base of your pinky toe, and your heel. If your weight's evenly distributed between those points, you're going to squat more functionally, and it's going to be better. Okay, and that's going to help activate more of those foot muscles as well as your gastroc and soleus there, or your calf muscles, we could say. Okay, so super important. And then the other thing, right, is number 3, as we kind of go through here, is you want to jam both of your big toes down into the ground, right? You should not be curling your big toes down, and you should not be lifting them up off the ground. And that's probably the most common thing I see in probably 8 out of 10 people that I work with, either in the clinic or online when doing mobility assessments. They have unstable feet. They tend to kind of curl up and tense up too much, and then they lose balance and stability, and they have an issue somewhere at the knee or the hip because of that. Or they tend to curl upwards too much, and then they lose balance and stability that way, right? Because the way you're gonna have really good balance is if you have a grounded foot. Think of a house, right? You need a good foundation on a house. If you don't have that cement foundation, the house can blow right over, right? Your feet are the same way. They're the foundation for your body. So the foot needs to be splayed apart like this, and that's going to help improve your balance. If it's squished in a tight shoe like a Nike or Adidas like shoe, especially weightlifting shoes, you know, they're good to wear when you're obviously Olympic weightlifting and you have to for that absorption and impact so you don't get ankle injuries or foot injuries. But, you know, they tend to obviously be kind of have a big heel, right? So it takes your calf out of it. So less stress on the Achilles tendon, right? Less prone to kind of developing a strain or a tear there or a rupture. But they do tend to cram the toes, and they're actually coming out with, they came out with a, not a barefoot, but a wide-based toe box, a weightlifting shoe a couple weeks ago. I forget the name of the company. I can look it up if you guys are interested. If you are, comment down below, just say weightlifting shoe, and I'll look it up and get you that information. But that's just because like your foot, if it can space out naturally like this, it's gonna be more stable on the ground. So that's super important. And that's number 3, jam your big toes into the ground. Okay. And then number 4, and the last one, is push your knees out, right? You want to push your knees out to both walls to the side. Because if you don't push your knees out and they cave inwards, what's going to happen at your foot? You're going to collapse your arch inwards, or your big toe is going to lift up. So both of those things need to be working in conjunction with each other, and that's why they call them synergistic muscles, right? Because that just means they're working together in synergy, right? Almost like a team, like a soccer team working together to score a goal, right? All these muscles share the same goal to get you to the bottom of the squat, to the top of the squat, okay? So again, just to recap on the 4, you assume a natural stance, right? So again, if it's shoulder width distance for you, maybe it's a little bit wider, maybe your feet are turned out, maybe they're turned in. Find what's comfortable for you and your body and fits your kind of physique, right? Number 2 is creating a tripod foot. So evenly distribute the weight between those 3 points we talked about. Number 3 is jamming your big toes down into the ground. And number 4, and the last one out of all of them, is push the knees out, right? So that's so important that you push that big toe down into the ground and you turn those knees out, right? So you can actually rotate. If I can draw an arrow, I draw an arrow out here to the right and an arrow out here to the left. Okay, and that's just going to mean that your hips are going to externally rotate, which is going to turn on your glutes and your outer hip muscles to help stabilize. It's going to take some pressure off of the inner knee as well and off the inner arch of the foot. Okay, and then you let those knees kind of naturally fall out at the bottom. And this isn't just important at the bottom of the squat, guys. This is important from the bottom to the top, right? Because this is the most common area where people get injuries that they don't think about, is when they're down in this kind of deep squat or 90-degree squat with their hips at knee height or below, they tend to cave their knees far inwards when they're coming up, right? It's almost like if you had a ball there, it looks like they're squeezing the ball inwards with the knees. And that's not good either, because that can put a lot of strain on these inner structures of the knee, your ACL, right? Your medial meniscus, and it can cause collapsing of your arch too. So it's just as important as when you're going down, bringing your knees out, as it is going up to keep them out. And that's going to help prevent you from injury. Same thing with overhead squat, right? Same thing, right? You can see, let me go back a little bit, right? Pushing the big toes down, keeping the knees out as you go down and you come up, right? Those knees don't collapse at all when they're doing that motion. So that is the topic for tonight, right? How to squat properly in the 4 cues. Again, just to recap, assume a natural stance, create a tripod foot, jam your big toes into the ground. Number 4 is turn the knees out. If you guys have questions, or you need help with your squat, or you want to do an assessment, or you're just unsure of things, let me know. I do assessments with people all the time. I've done 5 so far this week. And I have a couple more set up for Friday. I would say they're great because I record them, give you the recording, go through it with you, kind of teach you what I think you should do and what you should focus on first. So a lot of people get stuck trying to do too many things at once and they stop everything altogether. right? Kind of like if you had 3 jobs and you just burnt yourself out. The body's the same way. You got to start slow and steadily progress, and that's the way you get better. All right, so thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next week. Have a great one.